Hi, we are joined by an absolute badass human being, Brita Fernandez Schmidt, is Director of Women for Women International Charity, author of Fierce to Fierce, has been championing women's rights on a global level for 25 years now. You look too young to be doing that. But then, do you know what? I say I've been doing it since I could walk. So, you know what I mean? You could easily be doing it. For 25. So it is great to have you here. It's amazing. And the theme is Ignite Your Fierce, and which I think goes really hand in hand with last week we did a whole series on Choose to Challenge, which is sort of, you know, the International Women's Day theme, which honestly, I just think for Sistr, we're carrying it on. We're carrying on doing webinars and talks around that theme, because with everything going on in the world at the moment and the effect on women in the last year and what happened in the UK last week and is still happening, I just think, you know what I mean, we can't, as women, we can't stop choosing to challenge, can we?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
Just start, where did this fire come from? Where did this sort of absolute driving passion to take on the world and change it, where did it start?
Oh, and thank you so much, first of all. I don't think I've ever been introduced as badass woman, and I love that. I take it. I will take it. There are other labels that people have introduced me with that I will not take. I reject. But this one, I will wear that badge with honor. I love it. Thank you. What a wonderful way to start the conversation. Yeah, so there was this kind of moment in my life when I was just turning 15 and my parents had decided to move from Germany to Venezuela. And something that, by the way, I absolutely did not want, because I just, at that age, 14, 15, I just had my great friendship group and I was like all settled and definitely did not want to go to Venezuela. I didn't even really know where that country was on the map, but obviously I didn't have a choice, and so there we were moving to Venezuela, and just it was like I remember it physically actually, like arriving in Caracas and the kind of doors opening of the airport building and this heat, this equatorial heat, enwrapping my body, and it was just like, wow, and everything changed in that moment. And then from then on, I was just exposed to a completely different culture, completely different life, and really saw firsthand how poverty impacts us as humans and how poverty disproportionately impacts women. And I didn't have the language at the time. I didn't know the statistics. All I just had was just like, what is going on here? How is it possible? How is it possible that this beautiful country, in this case, and now the world, is such a rich world, and yet there are these extreme pockets of poverty where people have nothing when other people have this enormous abundance? And I just told myself, that is not right. That's just not right. And and it's obviously not right. And now I have the statistics, and I know that 70% of the poorest are women, and that obviously is all entrenched in gender inequality. And that was something that I was then also waking up to in my own life, where suddenly my father started treating me differently to my brother, having expectations on me that he didn't have to be over. And I was like, whoa, what is going on here? And so that's kind of what ignited this fire within me, which clearly had been there. And I don't really remember very well what I was like when I was 5, 10, whatever. I imagine that I was always being quite fierce, because I think it's what's in you, but then it's the issue that how much do you allow it out, right? How much do you allow yourself to follow that fire within you, or how much do you take the fire blanket and because you're scared that you're not going to fit in?
I know, and squash it down. There's that. I love that saying. Is that, can you remember who you wanted to be before the world told you who you should be? And I think that's, especially in girls, it's massive, isn't it?
That's exactly it. I love that. I have read this before, but I've completely forgotten about it. That's exactly it.
And what were you, because it's funny because listening to it's quite parallel. I grew up in the Middle East, and that's what a lot of my fire came from, suddenly realizing as a teenager, and that's when you start noticing the differences of, hang on a minute, why are the girls and women being treated like that, and why can the boys do that? And yeah, the more you look, the more, yeah, so it's similar on that. But what were you seeing on your statistics now when you're talking about, the data? Why do you think there is this massive, it is massive inequality across the world, but why do you think it disproportionately affects women and girls?
Well, I believe it is because of the inherent gender inequality, the kind of the gendered roles that women are expected to play, and that assign them a specific position within the family, within society, which often then means that as girls, they don't get the same nutrition, so they get less meals. They don't get to go to school. They get their kind of sexuality is controlled immediately, whether it's like female genital mutilation or whatever. They are treated as the property of men. So initially the property of your father, who then arranges forced marriages or decides who you are passed on to in terms of property, and then you're the property of your husband. And so this is basically why poverty then impacts you disproportionately, because you are less likely to have been to school. Therefore, if you haven't got a minimum there are all the statistics that show you even just a few years of education will mean that you have a greater income. And so then you don't have an education, you don't have an income, you're dependent on your husband. So you don't have any autonomy, you don't have no skills to earn and sustain an income, and you're likely to experience abuse, which will affect your obviously mental well-being and your drive and your ability to fend for yourself, and you will not have access to credit or finance, or because you don't, because in many countries, and still now, I mean, we know that even in the UK, women find it harder to access finance. But above all, you have internalized all of this. You don't even think of yourself as an autonomous being anymore. You think of yourself as the property of somebody, as an extension of someone. And so then you're constantly looking to someone else to signal whether, are you doing the right thing? Am I a good girl? Am I doing the right thing? Am I? So obviously, that those are all, the myriad of reasons, I believe, why women are disproportionately affected by conflict and by poverty and by by all the disasters that could happen to you, which is also what we've seen during COVID.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I read something interesting article yesterday, and the percentages, because the studies coming out is that women have taken on over 70% of the childcare and the housework and everything. But when people are questioned and asked about it, men and women, it's like over 60% believe that actually we should be equal at home and in life, and over 80%, it's only 8% think that women should do more of the chores and the childcare. So you've got this 8% that think they should do, but the actual reality is over 70% are doing and that's, what I mean? It's like what is being, even though the man folk think and believe in equality, they're not acting on it. And I just found it staggering that kind of, it's the behavior, isn't it? It's the changing that behavior on it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really interesting, and I wonder what that statistic was, say, 10 years ago. Because I'm so interested in thinking, how is change created? So just now I've pictured this the really horrendous situation that makes me really angry, these kind of entrenched gender stereotypes that lead to direct suffering. And but I'm and obviously I know we need to talk about this, but I'm really interested in it. So now that we know, how can we change? Like, how can we create the change, right? And I think we have created a lot of change, and I'm so sure that the statistic that you just quoted was even worse 10 years ago, because the fact is that I can see mindsets shifting all the time. I think even last week the whole of the horrendous situation of last week has created debates and conversations that, quite frankly, I'm like, really, guys, you're surprised? Hello? But you know what? Fine. Okay, I'm gonna take my anger and I'm gonna ask myself, okay, what more can I do? But at the same time, I'm also gonna say, you know what, at least we're talking about it now. That's really good, because we've got to talk about it. We've got to question the biases we have. We've got to question the conditioning that we've all been part of. Because, you know, to think that it is someone's fault, it's not any individual's fault. It is the societal structures that we've all been conditioned with, you know, women and men alike, that we need to continue to shake and shake more vigorously, I think. And out of that is going to come change, but it's not going to be overnight. It's just not going to be. I mean, I know I've been doing this for over 25 years actively in my career. Probably more like 30 years, banging on about that it's not okay to treat women differently just because we have a vagina, just doesn't make sense. So, but the thing is, it's gradual, right? And so it makes sense to me that women now think that actually men are doing more than they're actually doing.
Yeah.
Because change, right? The fact is that they're doing more than they did before. How exactly, whether we have yet to reach equality, obviously we haven't, but I think that's the key, right? That we're seeing a shift, and it's reflective of the fact that something is changing, that more needs to be changed, absolutely. But so
yeah, and also it's not just there's been a lot of man bashing, which I hate. I hate man bashing, because actually we're our own worst enemies a lot of the time, us women. And you know what I mean? We will complain, we will whinge, we will, there's the whole martyr syndrome, of, oh, I'm doing it all, I'm doing that. And how often do you go, hang on a minute, I need help, you're doing that. I put my foot down a lot more with my hubby, and we're very much equal, because I just won't take another option. I'm like, right, you're parenting, I'm doing this. We will sit back and just get on with it and do it without saying anything or asking for help. And then we'll sit there and bitch to our mates that, oh my God, I do everything. You're like, well, Right, and
I think that's so interesting. And I notice within me that is so true. And I read a book the other day that kind of talks about this as the human giver syndrome. Right? So this is the kind of the syndrome that particularly women have. But I mean, I've also met some men who have that, where you become so attached to this role of the victim, of the kind of sacrifice. I sacrifice myself for the family, all of them, and that actually you're contributing to it. Absolutely 100%. But it's because you are fulfilling this kind of need to be needed. And I talk about that in my book. There's like, and I think that's something that I personally have struggled with. Like, I really want to be needed, and when I feel needed, I feel worthy. And you need to kind of take a step back and look at them and say, wow, this is really problematic. There's a lot that is problematic with that, right? Because obviously the needs of other people around you will change, and then it really destabilizes you. Number one. Number two, you can easily feel resentful, which doesn't serve you, doesn't serve those around you. But it also takes away from the deep knowing that in the end of the day, your worthiness, only you can decide that. And that's why I'm so passionate about looking at change from an individual perspective first, as a starting. So not because that is where it will end. It doesn't. We have to look at the communal changes and and how we change structures. But starting with yourself, to getting to know yourself, understanding where you are holding yourself back is really powerful.
Yeah, I'm always, whenever I'm asked, if I'm like, be selfish, and people always sort of look at me and just go, why are you telling people, and I'm like, no, you have to, until you're selfish and you look at you and what you need to make you a happy person, then how can you make anyone else happy? And you can sit there doing poor me, or you can actually go, no, I'm going to be selfish and I'm not happy with that. I need that to make me happy. I need that. Your hobbies and your passions and your mates and me time. And I don't think we don't do it enough. So that's always what I say. Just, you're going to have to be selfish with it.
I think so, and I love that. I'm totally actively practicing that at the moment, and I find it really hard because I'm constantly in my head think, oh, this is selfish, but actually, it's and thinking that selfish is bad, right? So this kind of connotation that if you do something for yourself, that's selfish. wow, I mean, we got to reframe what we think is selfish. Selfish is good because, like you say, do you want to signal to your daughters? Like in my case, I've got two daughters. Do I want to signal to them that looking after yourself and following on your instincts and what is important to you is not okay? Do I want them to learn that through my behavior? No, I don't, right? So this is the thing, and I think this is like in addition to, it doesn't serve anybody around you. If you want to genuinely support others around you, you've got to start with yourself. But even if you don't say, you're still sending those signals if you're not looking after yourself, because people are looking at you, right? And I mean, they're always people looking at you, whether you realize it or not, and they're going to take the cue from you. So,
yeah, exactly. And as you said that for, I've got two littlies as well. Now, I'd say you're going to feel guilty whichever way you do, but I make a point of going away at least once a month for a night and into a hotel or spa or whatever, the cheap ones, with girlfriends. And as soon as I get there, I feel guilty thinking, oh my God. And then I go, no, this is selfish and it needs me and I need it. And, and then you realize you feel a bit like fear. You feel the guilt, it's in your head, it's not going anywhere. You go sit down and have a cup of tea because this is what I'm doing. It's that.
God, why did I not know you when my girls were younger? I mean, hello, I needed you then.
I needed my 42-year-old self back in my 20s, that's for sure.
Right?
Exactly. Your Fears to Fierce book, where did the idea come from? Like, what was the purpose of writing it?
Yeah, it was so interesting because I was, doing my work, I was following my purpose. I was, working with Women for Women International, and before that I worked with Womankind Worldwide, and just, working with colleagues on trying to raise awareness and change the world for women, and always really focused on other women. And then I began to realize that I had to, in the end of the day, the change that I wanted to create had to start with me. And so I did a lot of reading, soul searching. I had coaches, and like really just learned so much, and always could keep like notes and had like little, not diaries, but like reflection books and so on. And then gradually, as I was, growing the organization, people started to be more interested also in me and what I had learned and how I got to where I had gotten to. And anyway, it was really, and that was very kind of surprising to me. I had not really expected that because it never felt this was about me. It was about the work I did and the change that I created. And so that was an interesting learning experience. Anyway, out of that came increasingly that people asked me to give keynote speeches at these big conferences with hundreds of women who wanted to know, how to, anyway, move forward in life. And so I took that responsibility really seriously. So I went through my notes and my, over the years that I had collected, and came up with these 10 things that I felt I had learned that would perhaps be useful for other women. And as I was preparing for the speech, I wanted to say so much more about each one of these points. And I thought, God, I think maybe this is a book. Maybe these are 10 chapters. Oh my God, yeah, maybe. And so once I had that thought, it wouldn't go away. And so I kind of started thinking, well, I think maybe I'm going to write a book. I mean, this was like 3 years ago, and obviously I have a full-time job, and this was going to be a personal book, so I had to do it in like my own time, and so yeah, but that's really, it was this journey, this beautiful journey of just allowing a thought to flourish. And I get the sense, Ems, that you are like that too, because it feels like you're a serial entrepreneur, and isn't it magic when you just allow it and you just say, yeah, I have literally no idea how you write a book, but I'm just gonna start thinking about it, and then start talking to somebody about it, right?
Yeah, they always say talk. Once you put it out there and you talk to someone about an idea, you've always got to get it out, and then it's out there, and you can't. It's Pandora's box. It's out. You can't put it back in. Yeah.
Right. And I did. The first person, one of the first people that I spoke to was Jasmine Hensley, who's a really dear friend and obviously also wonderful ambassador of Women for International. And she had invited me to this book launch, The Female Lead. I don't know whether they have this amazing book with inspiring. Yeah, and we went there and we were like talking. Obviously, we were talking about books, and I said, you know what? I had this idea that I think I might write a book. And she said, amazing, absolutely, you should write a book. I'm like, okay. And have you got an agent? I'm like, what's an agent? Anyway, she said, I have got the perfect agent for you. You need to meet her. You're gonna love her. And I'm like, okay, all right, okay, fine, yeah, great. Anyway, I met her. I loved her. She's my agent now, Valeria. Incredible. Anyway, and this is how it all, this is exactly like you say, just put it out there. And then there's no turning back, And then, yeah, I mean, sometimes you have ideas, you put them out there and actually nothing really happens. There's no energy around them. And then you actually know that that wasn't what you were supposed to do. And then with others, it's like, pew, 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 pew. And next thing you know, ta-da, I've got my book.
I know, it's amazing. That's the thing, isn't it? It is. I'm always like, yeah, the ideas. And then I would say if things feel like it's too much of a battle, it's too hard work, you're kind of going, actually, I don't want to be waking up at 4 a.m. thinking about it. I've got no desire. Then it's learning to feel that, isn't it? You can really feel the energy of ideas that actually you're kind of trying to force, that you think is a good idea, and then the ones that actually are a good idea, and you've got the burning passion in there. But what do you do to on the fear side? Because fear it's a huge thing that holds women back, well, everyone back, but confidence and fear is a massive issue with women wanting to jump to launch their own businesses, get out of shit marriages, that kind of what's your advice on fear? Like, what have you learned? How have you learned to sort of go for it?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this actually links to the question that you asked me, which I didn't properly answer in terms of the objective of the book. I kind of talked about how I got to write it, but as I was sitting down, I was looking at what I had learned and what I'd learned around, particularly for women, what it takes to own your power and to genuinely, be that person that you were when you were 14, 15, and you had this fire in your belly. And it was very clear to me that what had held me back for many years was fear, and all sorts of fear. And so in the book, I feel like hopefully I've managed for this to be like a journey where I hold you by the hand and you are exploring both what this fire in your belly is and reconnect with that, and then explore why it is that you had lost connection to it. What are all these fears that are holding you captive? And this is like fear of not being a good girl, the fear of not being liked, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being able to cope if you're not needed, the fear of not being able to cope if you fail. All of these things, all these fears that I believe many of us have in us, but we don't take time to even stop for a moment and really look at our fear, because it kind of feels counterintuitive, right? Like, no, fear that must push it away.
Yeah.
What I invite you to do is like become friends with it. Literally take the fear, which often manifests itself through this voice in your head, right? Take that fear, look it in the eye, and say, okay, hello, you've got my attention now. So what is it? What are you really scared of? Like, look it in the eye. Because then when you do, it just immediately already shifts something. Because suddenly, okay, I'm just really scared that they're not going to like me. Okay. All right. Okay. So now that we know that, let's who is they? And then you literally dissect it. You kind of take a scientific approach to it. You go, okay, who's they? Okay. So now, well, how likely is that? Okay. So just say they didn't. Say the worst case scenario happens and they don't like you. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, you think you're going to die? Is that, and then this is the important thing. And this is for me the most important way of overcoming or getting through fear, or maybe placing fear on the shoulder and saying, you know what, I'm just going to place you here and I'm going to do it anyway, is this fire in your belly. Because if you really know what matters to you, you know what really, really matters to you, that can be like this iron rod or this kind of strength that you can hold on to, even when, or particularly when you feel this enormous fear. You can hold both. You can hold this immense strength within you, this passion, this fire, and you can also feel the fear. And in that moment, when you realize that you can do both, you open up a window of a choice where you can choose your fears. And you can say, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it because I feel it within me. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to listen to that voice of fear. And then you get through and then you've done it, and then you're starting to build a muscle. And the fear doesn't go away, right? And I say this really clearly, and fear does not go away. It's not that it goes away or that you're ever going to be fearless. And some people kind of introduce me, oh, Brita is the fearless. Oh, no, I'm not fearless. No. I have fear every day, multiple times a day, 100%. I've just learned so much about that fear and about my capacity to be fierce anyway, even with the fear, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. It is. It's that because we all like we're in our natural state is to be in a comfort zone, isn't it? It's kind of that natural animal state of and if anything comes along that threatens that natural state, it's like no, go, run away, get that. So I have the way I have the conversations with my fear, which is again is that I have these little people in my head. That's another little person in my head. That one, and I always go, well, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can possibly happen? So because I combine that with, well, how am I going to feel if I don't do it? If, it's a bit embarrassing. If I tell that I'm not going to do it, I can't do it. How is that going to look? It's that, slightly publicly humiliated kind of, it's sort of, what am I going to say to people that I haven't gone through with it? It's sort of that kind of actually putting out, where you're saying putting it out there, the idea and talking to people about it. Once you've got it out there, you've got to do it. In the same way, if you put out that you haven't done it, how's that going to sound and how embarrassed are you going to feel telling your mates and families that you were too chicken shit to do something? It's sort of, that's always been something like, well, what's everyone going to say if I don't do it, has been a bigger question to me than what are people going to say if I do it. That's just a given. I'll do it. But,
and I think it's really interesting what you're saying about and what I hear you do is that you kind of use the beliefs that you've created to help yourself, right? So if you believe it's important what other people say, then actually use that to propel you forward, right? I guess what I think I'm also really interested in because what I know for sure is that we can't control what other people say.
Yeah.
Right. And that maybe I wonder whether what is underlying that sense is actually more this impact that we all create, that we spoke about earlier. By whatever we do creates an impact, even just being who we are. And if we honor ourselves, we honor that fire, that light within us, and we act on it, that shines through, and people will see that, they will recognize that, and that is what inspires them to also find that fire within them to follow through on what is right for them. And maybe that for me is my biggest thing that propels me forward, because I know that people recognize you, they see when you are being brave and true to that fire within you. And because I know that, that's why I do it, because I do genuinely care so much about others finding their fierce and fulfilling their potential, that becomes my my yardstick, more than necessarily what people think about me, because that's been something I had to learn, Ems, because I can't control what people think about me. Just as much as I would love to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting how
that fire and having, it's kind of like when you light a fire, you sort of, if you've got the fire, you're a burning fire, but it's when you've got like a stream of petrol kind of down it and you watch the fire spread, it's sort of actually that's what it comes down to, doesn't it, really? It's all very well us standing here completely on flames, but nothing's going to change unless the flames spark another flame and another flame and another flame. And I always say that with what's going on like last week, and for change to happen, you need the movement, and you need one of the flames to jump until you've got a complete wildfire going on that's completely uncontrollable, that needs dealing with.
And I think that's exactly it, right? And I write about this at the end of my book, because that for me is this kind of journey that as you are getting closer to your fire and allowing it to burn more brightly, sparks, like you say, will will kind of leave the fire and will ignite others around you, that then sparks their own fire, and it's their fires. But in that, you then see each other reflected in those flames, right? And that's when you connect. And that's when you build a movement. And we have seen this in recent years so beautifully, whether it's the Me Too movement or the Black Lives Matters, or what's happened last week, and also all around the world, other movements where people, say this is not okay, and then someone else says, I agree, or like me too, okay. And that's when when you realize that we are all connected and we are part of a bigger universe, and that when we come together, we also become more than the sum of our parts, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I mean, and then suddenly it takes on this dynamic, and the next thing you know, you have changed something fundamentally, fundamentally changed it. Like I always think about Liberia and the women's peace movement, and how women were the ones who brought the war to the years and years of war and killing. They sat at the street together across the warring divides and factions, and they just sat there and they said, we're going to sit on the street until peace happens. We're going to tool our, we're going to down our tools. We will no longer have sex. We won't clean. We won't do anything until there is peace. And that sparked the peace negotiations, and which is also why, obviously, then three of those women won the Peace Nobel Prize, and it gave way to the first ever African female president, Eileen Sirleaf Johnson, in Liberia.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is the power that we have all individually, and then when we pool it together.
Yeah, well, maybe the women over here should down tools and refuse sex, then clean and cook and sit on the pavement, sit on our doorsteps until everything's unlocked and back to normal. I tell you what, it would happen pretty damn quickly.
It's the thing, and this is why I'm so passionate about showing women the power that we have. And this is why I have these stories in my book, to show, like, honestly, when we put our minds to it.
Yeah. What's like the scare, because living in Venezuela, and what's sort of the scariest thing that you've encountered, or the most really upsetting, scary, most shocking thing that you've encountered, that you've seen, that's actually sort of really made you fierce, added to your fire?
Yeah, actually, what? It's been the stories of women who I have met, more so than maybe scary moments that I've been in myself personally. It's been more the stories of the women, and like one story that comes to mind is of a woman I met in the Congo, and she just had this. Like the minute when I saw her, I could sense there was something about her, this incredible strength and grace. It was grace. That's what it was. She just had this grace, and yet there's so much pain you could sense immediately. And we were all dancing, and then afterwards we sat together, and I asked whether she would talk to me, and she was really happy to share her story, because that has become part of how she has turned her adversity into strength and purpose, which is what I talk a lot about in my book, right? Is that we look back over the moments in our lives where we have experienced loss, sadness, challenges, and it's those moments that define us, because we learn so much from those moments, and we grow and we take values from them that then become part of our purpose and our drive in life. And that was the case for her, and she told me that she had been caught in the middle of the fighting, and had been, held at gunpoint by militia, and she was pregnant at the time. And anyway, maybe I don't go into all of the details, but it was absolutely awful, and what she had to endure. And she, she showed me the scars, and she told me about the story, and and I had this moment when I sat there and I thought to myself, I'm having a really hard time to reconcile what I just heard, which was so unbearable. I could barely actually even take it in, let alone imagine that someone had actually experienced that, with this picture of this grace that I had witnessed when she had been dancing. And actually for me, that is what I always hold in my heart, and what nurtures my fears, to know that it is possible, that it is possible to experience the deepest pain and trauma, and for that not to define the essence of who you are. It's an experience you've had that will shape you, but that grace, beauty, that strength that I saw in her, that had been there all along and is not tainted by whatever might happen to you. And you know, that hope, that immense hope is kind of that inspiration. That's what I feel. It's like the food for my fears. You know, those stories, and knowing that there's always something that you can do. Yeah.
That's amazing. Goosebumps. I read which I won't name her, is amazing. She's amazing, like psychologist doctor who looks into like victim abuse, and she put a whole blog post out yesterday, and it's on LinkedIn, and she went through her entire life history of when things happened to her. And it was this is a girl in England. It was absolutely, I was sobbing by the end of reading this LinkedIn post. It was, you know, you just can't compute what someone's been, and you just think, this is in our country, under our laws, with our police and our legal system, and it just, my brain's still computing that one. It's like, it's horrific. I might share it on the Sistr Facebook group, actually, the link to the blog post. But on that note, and that experience, you're very on for Women International. Do you want to explain more about the work they do, and actually how people can get involved? I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with them about Sistr getting involved on a like corporate level and stuff. So, but yeah, explain away.
Yeah, exactly. So the woman that I just described, you know, I met her through Women for Women International. And so Women for Women International works in countries affected by extreme poverty and conflict. And countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, Nigeria, South Sudan, Iraq, Afghanistan. So really the kind of countries that you would probably normally only hear about in the press, often with, you know, horrendous headlines, and you very rarely hear about what's happening to women, other than perhaps that they are experiencing mass rapes and and trauma. But you very rarely hear about how they're surviving, and how they keep life going, because they do. You know, I mean, this is the fact, right? And so Women for International finds those women who have no support, who have experienced horrendous trauma, and who are at the greatest risk of being left behind of everything. And what we do is we bring them together in classes of 25, because we know, and this like totally speaks to sisterhood, right? And we know that the minute you connect women, something magical happens. So even if that was the only thing we did, which is obviously not the case, that in itself would already be immense, because you break the cycle of isolation. Honestly, and I've seen this, like women come together and we do a lot of trust building at the beginning, and we have this circle of trust, and we hold each other's shoulders, and, you know, create a safe space. And there is this magic that really you suddenly see, like a light goes on in their eyes when they realize that it was not their fault, that they are not the only ones who've been raped and abused, and you know, whose children have been killed in front of their own eyes, etc. And obviously the trauma is still there, but it's something changes because you connect, and suddenly you have other women that you can literally lean on. And from that base, we then teach women new skills. We teach them an income skill that they can choose based on the kind of market assessment we've done in their country, so that at the end of the year-long program, they can earn and sustain an income. But not only that, we teach them about their rights, about the fact that they have power within, you know, and that they have a right to express that power, a right to vote, a right to take part in family decision making. Then we teach them about their health. So many women, they have not been to school, so they don't even have the most basic knowledge about how to look after their bodies, how to cook more nutritious meals, how to prevent preventable diseases, etc., etc. You know, which all things that fundamentally change your life. You know, and you feel well, you're going to feel stronger. When you feel connected, you're going to feel stronger. When you have knowledge suddenly that you can use to go out and earn money, now you've got financial results. Wow, everything changes, right? And so those are the pillars of our core program, the kind of Stronger Women, Stronger Nations program that takes a year, and at the end of the year, so we monitor really carefully how women progress, and at the end of the year, on average, women more than triple their income, are able to send children to school, know their rights, speak up in meetings, sometimes run for like political office. I mean, and obviously, as would be expected, and use their newfound power that always resides within them anyway, right? Use that and their voice to create change at the community level, to go and challenge rapists and take them to the police. I mean, stories I've heard, unbelievable. Only I completely obviously believe them because we know what happens when women tap into their power. So, and the way that we do that is, obviously through raising money so that we can pay for the local teams that are all locally run and led, to implement this training program. And the way we raise the money is really widespread. So we have corporate partnerships with big corporates like Charlotte Tilbury and Net-a-Porter and Monica Vinada and a whole host, but also through government funding that we secure in the Global North, but then really importantly through our sponsor assisted program, right, where you can support one woman at a time as your system, and men can do this too. And the woman who goes through our program knows that there is a sister or brother, someone, in another country who cares for them so much that they are, giving a monthly donation. In the UK, it's £23, for the year. And you can also write letters to the women. And I swear, every time I travel, which I've missed so much, seeing my colleagues and meeting the women, that women will come up to me and say, "Oh, and they might have a letter, from her sister in the bra or tucked in her little purse, and so you can see it's like all tattered because it's like a talisman, it's like a, and it's like, this is my sister. Do you know her? Like a photo maybe, and it's just this beautiful thing of being able to say to another woman, "I see you." That is just the most powerful gesture of acknowledgement, right? And when you do that, the message you send is that I see you, I acknowledge you, I believe in you, you exist. So powerful.
It's that existing. It's that what we said right at the beginning, isn't it? It's that, remembering who you are before the shit happens and the world tells you that you don't exist, isn't it? That the fierce, I mean, you see it in little girls, mine are 2 and 4, and the fire in them, it's there. And I just find it really sad that, statistically, it's something like by the time they're 7, they're already thinking they can't do the things boys can do. And you just go, that's not, how does that, happen? It's just, they are, because actually that fire is unbelievable. That imagine what could happen if it's sort of, allowed to ignite and run wild. But thank you so much for coming on. That was amazing. But we'll put the link to your book in this, and we could talk for hours. But thank you.
We could. I'm so happy to be connected to you, and thank you so much for reaching out and for for linking. I mean, anything with sister in the word is like, I'm in. I think it's so great what you're doing, and I hope that this can be a beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's the thing, is I hate it. Then girls have been kind of singled out to compete against each other, you want to and actually, that's the thing, you sort of go, no, working together and having each other's backs and not seeing each other as competition is
right.
It's massive.
You know what? That was my truth to challenge the notion that there is not enough for everyone to go around. Because you know what? Sisterhood is a choice. You can choose to believe in sisterhood, and you can choose to believe in abundance, and to choose to believe that there is more than enough for all of us to go around, and that when we lift each other up is when we create even more. So I completely agree with you. Yay.
Yeah. Oh, yay to the sisterhood. Thank
Yay
you.
to sisterhood.